My life is being torn into a million pieces. My fiance Buck has given me an ultimatum to either go with my son in Florida or stay here with him. Buck says if I leave, our relationship would be over.
What are you gonna do? Are you leaving?
Oh, I kind of have to. I mean, he's my kid.
The situation with my son Steven is that we feel he's unsafe to be around the other children. When he gets angry, he smashes my furniture, hits holes in the doors, destroys his room. One time, my son got mad because we took his phone away from him, and he ended up punching holes in a couple of my doors.
You think that's a real bully? You think I'm just playing with you?
There was an incident in our home where my son found a gun out in the garage.
You think that's a real bully?
He proceeded to chase the children around the home with it, cussing at them, threatening them.
Sit down. This gun is not on safety. Look in that chamber. You see that bullet? Look.
I was not home at the time. When I found out about the gun incident, I was more scared about what Buck was gonna do when he found out.
I'm gonna kill you. Swear to God. If I don't beat you right now, it's gonna be way worse.
Another time, while we were asleep upstairs, my son chased his younger brother around the basement with a leather belt that had silver metal brads all over it. It was Buck's decision to remove him from the home. He's now living with my younger brother. I understand the reasoning why Buck doesn't want him here around the other children, but at the same time, I don't want to turn my back on my son. I really love Buck. Right now, my relationship with Buck is rocky. I do feel like Buck is being unreasonable. He's not giving me a good enough reason why it can't work.
Well, you're probably thinking, hey, if my kid's not welcome, I'm not welcome. But things are not always simple on Dr. Phil. There's more to it than meets the eye. Buck says Steven's outrageous and dangerous behavior has threatened everything he has built. And if Stephani leaves for Florida, the relationship is over, and there is more to this than meets the eye. Take a look.
I feel like if Stephani leaves, that we're not moving forward with us, period. If she's leaving and going 1,600 miles away, Steven has torn us apart in many ways. My stepson is angry, defiant, and disrespectful. He doesn't think the rules apply to him. He wants what he wants when he wants it, and he wants it now. The other 4 children, I feel like, are somewhat bullied by my stepson through stealing from them. He won't abide the rules of the home. The straw that really broke the camel's back was the gun incident. I did chase him around the house on 2 occasions, pointing the gun at him, and the gun was absolutely loaded. He didn't know it.
That's a bullet right there. Where's he at? I'm about to start firing this ball.
When I asked him about it, he said, "Come on, Dad. You know I took the clip out. It wasn't loaded." To fast forward 3 days ago, we're moving. I popped the chamber back on the gun, and a bullet flew out. So the gun was loaded. I kicked my stepson, Steven, out of the house for modeling bad behavior, stealing, doing dangerous things around the other kids. I was pretty fed up. Just felt like change wasn't going to come. Our relationship with Stephani is definitely up in the air. We're definitely coexisting in the home. It's got some resentment building. Romantically, it's kind of stagnant. If Stephani leaves, my children will have a huge void. They call her mom, they depend on her. Our business is going to suffer. I want normality. We've put something together here. I want to keep it.
Well, joining us virtually are Stephani and Buck. Is there really no middle ground? Buck, why is the relationship over if she leaves?
I mean, I feel if she leaves, that she's not capable of moving Steven forward and getting him where he needed to be as a young man. So going there would just be a long pause, and life moves on, and I would have to make such big changes that I wouldn't be able to invest in a long distance relationship, is what I feel like.
Stephani, what do you say? As I said when I was introducing this, the common sense would be, hey, if my children aren't welcome, if my child's not welcome, then goodbye, I'm not welcome, I'm out of here. But Buck seems to think that it's not going to help if you go anyway, so what's the point? What do you say?
That's absolutely how I feel. I need to be there for my son, and if if he's not allowed here, then I need to go be with him. But I also have a younger son that calls Buck Dad that doesn't want to go.
But that's a new attitude for you, right?
It absolutely is, yes, sir.
The fact of the matter is, this child is 16 years old, and you haven't raised him for any sustained period of his life yet. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir, that is true. I've been a drug addict most of my life. Yes, sir.
right? And so if we look at the history of you pawning this child off, you're hardly even on this list. You're hardly even on the chart.
No, sir, I'm not there at all, hardly.
So why all of a sudden you've got this mandate that you just feel like you got to be there? Are you going to salve your own guilt, or are you going for what's best for him?
I don't know what's best for him. That's where I'm at. I don't know what's best for him, and I do feel guilt.
I was a drug addict for many years. I was not a parent at all. My son Steven was born with meth in his system. I had been clean for a long time. Towards the very end of my pregnancy, I ran into some old friends and I just happened to get high. After I had gotten high, I had him the very next day and he had methamphetamines in his system. My son lived with my mother majority of his lifetime. When my son was 5 years old, the cops came into the home that I was at looking for someone that had a warrant. My son happened to be visiting me that day, along with my younger son, and a couple of days later, CPS came and got them and took them into foster care.
Well, Stephani admits her son Steven had a troubled childhood due to her earlier drug use. Now, she's been sober for 6 years, but now she says his behavioral issues are coming between her and her fiance, Buck, who says that Steven is no longer welcome in his home because he is a danger to the other children.
The very first behavioral issue Steven ever had in his entire life was when he got into foster care. While he was in foster care, he bit and kicked the foster parents, and they called CPS. They came and got him. He was diagnosed with ADHD, mood disorder, and put on medications. Between 6 to 8 years old, he acted out in school, threatening to kick the teacher or gonna hit the teacher with a hammer, cussing at the principal of the school. My youngest son stayed with him and my mom when they got out of foster care. He was very mean to him, bullied him, and poured dirt down his throat more than one time. There was another incident when he was younger. He went to live with another family member and did okay for a minute, and then I guess he had kicked her and she sent him back to my mother. When we first started living together, Buck and my son were very close.
He was looking for a father figure. He needed guidance, and he wasn't punished very often. He would end up going on a shopping spree the same day that he got in trouble. His behavior has always been able to escalate to out of control.
One time we got into an argument. He ended up pushing me down in the hallway and walked out of the house. I had to call the police.
There's only been one instance where he blew up and kind of threatened me. We ended up in a chokehold, basically, to restrain him. He doesn't participate in school at all.
The majority of his classes were failing. They were like 30s, 40s, and we took his phone away from him and he lashed out, tore up some of my furniture.
He will tell the other kids that, we're making way too much out of it. He's not doing anything wrong. Everything is normal behavior.
Okay, clearly there's dysfunctional behavior here. Are y'all aware that Steven says he's doing this on purpose?
No, sir, I'm not.
What he's told us is that his intention was to get put out of the house.
This is his history. If that's the case, then, I won't dispute it. But just to know that these things have been, and with no help will continue, as far as I know.
Well,
if that's the case, I hate that.
He keeps getting suspended from school and he's failing. He
Right.
smokes weed and he's trying to get the siblings to do it as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
He's breaking into bedrooms and stealing money. And you talked about him bullying his siblings, chasing them around with a belt. And then kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was waving this handgun in the siblings' faces. And he, of course, insists that the gun wasn't loaded. And we all know it's the unloaded gun that kills people, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I just want to take another listen to this audio of Steven waving the loaded gun in his siblings' faces. Let's listen to what is being said.
You think that's a real bully? You think I'm just playing with you? You think that's a real bully? You think I'm playing? Get down! Get back! Get back! I'm about to start firing this. This gun is not on safety. This gun is where is he at? Look in that chamber. You see that bullet? Look. That's a bullet right there.
Okay, do you think was he showing a bullet in the chamber?
I don't know.
I don't know. I know that when I popped the chamber, a week ago, there was a bullet that flew up out of the gun. That's what's terrifying. You expect those things from a 10-year-old and, you know, to accidentally do something like that. Not a 16-year-old. That's just too much for me. I'll be honest with you right now, Dr. Phil, I've never seen that video until you showed it right now.
Okay, I got you.
Yep.
I got you. And
Okay.
and I'm going to agree with you on one thing here, is that this is the trigger for this is not necessarily him wanting to move. The trigger for this is the neglect, the abuse,
Absolutely.
the abandonment that has
Absolutely.
happened to this child his entire life.
My son said he missed his family in Florida. I thought that it would be a good idea, since COVID happened and they weren't in school, to let him go visit my mother for a little while. Because he was failing in school, we sent him down there with hopes that they would have took the same kind of disciplinary actions that we were taking towards him, and they did not. They bought him a motorcycle. My son stole my mother's credit card for some things on PlayStation and stole my mother's car to visit a girl. He didn't even have a driver's license. My mother didn't punish Steven for stealing her car or misusing her credit cards. That's typical behavior for my mom when it comes to Steven.
What is the deal with you constantly asking someone else to raise your child? He's not
I don't
doing
know
well
how.
in school, so you thought, I'll send him to visit my mother. You've sent this kid to visit for 11 years.
The deal is that for my entire life I've been a drug addict. I don't know how to be a parent.
Are you doing anything to learn how to parent?
I'm not taking parenting classes. I'm not taking that step to do those things.
So we talked to Vera. She says she raised Steven for the first 11 years of his life, and he is now more than she can handle. Last time he stayed with her, she says he stole her car and her credit card.
My grandson does feel abandoned. As long as there was an open CPS case, Stephani got to see my grandson just about every weekend. No open CPS case, maybe a weekend here, a weekend there. It was never anything regular with Stephani. Buck has no emotional attachment to my grandson. Buck gave Stephani an ultimatum. I think Buck is wrong. If a man gave me that ultimatum, I'd pack my stuff, load my kids, and I would be on the road. That's just me. My grandson living with us, sometimes it was hard. He was diagnosed with ADHD while he was in foster care. My grandson has had a lot of issues with anger. One time, he didn't want to eat supper, and he just pushed me. I tripped and hit the stove and just broke my finger. I think my grandson, living with Stephani's brother, is a wonderful idea.
My grandson looks up to his Uncle James. He's awesome with Steven. Steven listens to James. I think Stephani needs to stay in New York with Buck.
I'm not a strict parent. Our children, they're spoiled. They've got every device in this home. Our rules are really basic. It's pick up after yourself, do your one chore a day, and participate in school. Participate in an extracurricular, whether it be flute, boxing, football, whatever it is. Every child is individual. Some kids have to maintain 70s, some are 85s, and some are 90s. Every child is different, and that's definitely the way they're treated in this home. That's truly the only rules in this home. Steven can't be told what to do. That's the main problem.
Steven admits he has some behavioral issues, but claims that Buck and Stephani overreact to every little thing. He says most of his bad behavior is just out of a typical teen, and he hated living in Buck's house because of his strict parenting that included grounding him for months at a time.
If my mom showed up here tomorrow, I don't think I would go with her. If she told me that things would be different, I would maybe consider it, only if things are gonna be different when I go back. Like, not just being all about disciplining us, being able to have fun sometimes, and not just be always serious, even when we're doing good. Whenever we do just something small, they like take it out of proportion, and they blow it out of the water, basically. One time I was disrespectful to a teacher at school, and I ended up getting grounded for a full month. I used to have anger issues, and I have some anger outbursts, but it's not as frequent as it used to be. But I do think Buck has anger issues. He gets mad very easily and yells a lot. My mom and Buck argue a lot, and that makes me want to fight with Buck and with my mom whenever I'm grounded for something that I really shouldn't be grounded that long for. It kind of makes me want to fight against them. It was just getting tiring, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. I feel like most of the stuff I do is actually just typical teenager stuff, like having an attitude, being slightly disrespectful, smoking weed. The gun incident, I was just playing around. Mom and Buck weren't home, and we were just all at the house by ourselves, and I was just trying to like scare them. But I knew that once I did it, it was wrong, and I wish I didn't do it, because it was just kind of stupid on my part. Mom and Buck kind of took it out of proportion like they do with most of the things. I really like where I'm at right now. It's just, whenever I go to New York, it just feels like a bad vibe because I don't really like living with Buck and my mom. I feel like me and my uncle have a special bond, and I really like it here because my uncle has been here for me my whole life, and my mom really hasn't.
Well, you're not seeing Stephen's face for a reason, and that is because if you watch at all, you know that I do what I can to protect kids' identity and faces. He's joining us now on the phone. Listen, there's no question that you've not had a typical childhood, and you're old enough now to start being responsible for your choices and for the behaviors, because the consequences start landing on you pretty hard.
Yes, sir.
And if you have anger issues or anger blow-ups, whatever you call them, and you need help with that, then you need to take that help. You need to get professional help with a therapist or whatever, so you don't make some choices that wind up really backfiring on you.
Every time I go do therapy and stuff, I just feel like it's always the same and it never really works.
That's up to you to take those tools and create value.
Yes, sir. I understand.
It's just like a coach. They can tell you what to do on the football field, but they can't catch the ball for you. What do you want to get out of therapy?
Really just being able to control myself when I start to feel angry and stuff, and just like control my impulsive like decisions that I make. Because sometimes I just do stuff without thinking about it.
Well, that's a very manageable thing, and you are coachable. I mean, you're doing well in football, right?
Yes, sir.
Then you are coachable. And if you can be coached in one thing, you can be coached in another. You say that your mom and Buck don't listen and blow everything out of proportion, especially Buck. But you have to understand that Buck has priorities as well. He's just gotten custody of his children, and he has a duty to keep chaos out of his home to those children as well. And things like the incident with the belt and the gun, those things just are not acceptable at any level. And you know that, and you knew it after you did it.
My brother is an amazing person. I just don't feel like that's a good place for my son to be, because it's interrupting his life. I just don't think that it's time for him to be raising a 16-year-old boy. That's my job.
The first month, it's great, but in time, he will revert to disrupting class, flipping on his grades. When it's time to be disciplined, he's just a kid uncle. It's not his place to deal with. So I worry. My stepson is always on his best behavior. When he moves to a new school, he's very polite. I just don't see how someone without kids, 23 years old, could possibly do that. I just don't think he really knows what he's signed up for.
I've got a question for you, Buck. You're saying he's just a young man, good intentions, but doesn't really know what he's getting into at this point. Do you have a better alternative?
That's why we're here. Well,
it's easy to point out what won't work, but do you have an option of something that will?
No. It's not that James wouldn't work. It's I just feel like it's not for him. It's not something he should be dealing with. And right now you see that they've got a great bond, right? And it's like the bond you have with your grandfather. That's crowded when you have to parent.
All right, well, here's what Stephen's Uncle James has to say.
Stephani and Buck's parenting style seems to be very strict, kind of my way or the highway. My nephew is a really good kid. Anytime he's been with me, he really brightens me up. Just like every other kid, he has those kind of smart remarks every now and then and a little bit of an attitude, but I wouldn't say anything more than a regular kid. School is going great. He's in football. I guess my parenting style is just really being open with him. I've always said strict parents make sneaky kids, and I agree with that 100%. I kind of let him do his own thing. My nephew has never had a really good structure. Growing up, I watched that and I wanted to help him because I love my nephew with all my heart. I think my nephew needs a one-on-one bond with somebody, and I don't think he gets that with Stephani and Buck. I think that she's had her opportunities. Stephani is definitely parenting out of guilt. Some of the reasons that he acts out are because of his past. It's hard to expect somebody to act a certain way when you didn't raise them. If Stephani came to take my nephew back at this point, if it got so serious that I had to take her to court, I probably would. Stephani has lost the privilege to raise my nephew. Stephani is gonna have to choose between Buck and my nephew. To be really 100% honest with you, I think she already has.
Joining us virtually is James, and God bless you for stepping up and extending a hand to this kid right now.
I think somebody has to, but thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you hadn't got any more idea than a goose what to do with a rebellious 16-year-old, right? You're new at this.
Yeah, you could say that. I'm definitely new at it.
Yeah, that does not disqualify you, by the way, by any stretch, because I haven't found anybody else that's got any more idea than a goose what they're doing either. But you realize that at this point you're in the honeymoon phase. He has had some experiences that have left some open wounds inside him that are way above your pay grade. There are some things that he has experienced, and there are some abandonment issues, some abuse issues, some things that are going on that take very skilled professionals to help him navigate the maze. And it's not something you can love him out of. It's not something that you can companion him out of. There are things that he needs very specialized help to know how to change his internal dialogue, how to forgive certain things with himself and with others, to get some kind of resolution to, so he doesn't have this anger welling up inside.
I've dealt with a lot of the same things that Steven has had to go through, and I don't know how much Steven knows that we are similar, but I definitely think that that's a topic that will come up in the future, and it will help me be able to guide him through any obstacles he comes to terms with while he's in Florida.
Well, empathy can make a big, big difference, no question about it. So next, what should the players in this drama do? Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.